This was the wild scene last night near Pittsburgh, PA, after Robert Morris knocked off the defending national champion Kentucky Wildcats in the first round of the NIT. So last year they made history. This year they are history. Joining us now from Louisville, where he covers the Cats and the Cards, is Lachlan McLean. Loch, we expected to be talking about Pitino, not pitying his rival. A few weeks ago, Coach John Calipari said this season was all his fault. How much do you blame the coaching here?
Well, I think in general, coaches get too much blame. They get too much credit. And obviously, this is 80% on the players who didn't perform. But this is not John Calipari's best year. He failed as a GM in kind of constructing this roster, didn't give himself enough depth. I think he failed from an X and O perspective in not trying a little bit more zone defense. But most of all, he failed in motivating this team. They are talented, still projected 4 possible first-round NBA draft picks, and he just couldn't get them to buy in. So definitely the worst year for him as a coach in the last 8 or 9.
I think the look on his face when he walked off the floor last night spoke volumes as well. I think based on last year, everybody, Locke, thought Calipari could throw out a bunch of freshmen and automatically check his bags to the Final Four. Does this make last year's one and done, one with a W-O-N, does it make that all the more remarkable?
Yeah, I think it really does. I think it makes us appreciate even more how quickly Anthony Davis and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist adapted to the college game. I don't care how high your recruiting ranking is. When you get to the college courts, it's a different atmosphere. There are different pressures. Those guys stepped up right away. That's why I think some UK fans who are already starting to talk about next year, we'll go 40-0 because of this great recruiting class. Step back a little bit. Just because Davis and Kidd-Gilchrist did it doesn't mean most other players will. And I think this year is a perfect example of that. All
right, you touched on it. We know where Kentucky goes from here, as you mentioned, the #1 recruiting class. But what does Cal have to do with the current Wildcats that he's got?
Yeah, that is a really good question, because if those guys come back, they're going to have to come back off the bench. And honestly, this is a team that he didn't like coaching. He didn't like their attitude. So it's like you want them back if you're a UK fan because they would give you the depth that Cal needs. But at the same point, if they're going to come back with the same attitude as this year, then you're not quite sure you want them. Cal's very fond of calling Kentucky a players-first program. But I think some of these players might get a little push out the door, especially Ryan Harrow. That's the big issue. What are they going to do with their point guard?
All right, so, Locke, if nothing else, you know we're fair here on CI. You offended the blue half of the state. Let's upset the red half now. And we're not talking about politics here. A lot of people have the Cardinals to win it all. Looking at the Midwest region, play spoiler for us and give us a solid reason why the Cards will not be cutting down the nets.
Well, all year I would have said outside shooting would be the reason, but they've really picked that up lately with Luke Hancock. To me, the thing you worry about if you're a Louisville fan is the officiating. As we saw in the Big East tournament, Louisville fouls a lot. They figure they're going to foul you every play, and the refs can't call them all. Well, if they get some zebras that decide to call it all, and all of a sudden Louisville starting backcourt, Smith and Siva gets 2 fouls each in the first 5 minutes, that could really throw Louisville for a loop. They don't have a ton of obvious glaring weaknesses, but they could get in foul trouble. That would be my one worry about the Cards, and that Duke matchup is a little troubling as well.
All right, the Duke matchup. So that's where you think Louisville could trip up. Who do you think could upset them there in the Midwest?
Yeah, well, look, if they get to the Sweet 16 against St. Louis, Rick Pitino's 10-0. He's not going to, in the Sweet 16, he's not going to lose that record against St. Louis. So to me, the first challenge Louisville gets is in the Elite Eight against Duke. And they've got some history there. They played already. Duke won. There's certainly some reasons Louisville didn't have Gorgui Dieng. They got nothing from Luke Hancock in that game. And I think the Cards would be favored. But to me, there's only 2 or 3 teams in this field that I would worry about if I were a Louisville fan. But Duke is one of them, and they happen to be right there in their region.
Interesting. And we talked to Mason Plumlee also here on CampusInsiders.com, and he spoke about that first matchup against Louisville and talks about the potential rematch in the tournament. All right, Lachlan McLean, thanks very much.
My pleasure.
Here's how you can win a brand new 60-inch LED Samsung TV in time for the Final Four. Campus Insiders is hosting a watch and win sweepstakes on our Facebook page. Just click on the sweepstakes icon, watch the Insiders video, and guess what school they're from. It's that simple.